Occlusion Laboratory Video Guides. Video 6. Waxing tooth numbers 19, 20, and 21. To begin, we will need to prep the models. We will need your articulator, your models, your handpiece, and an acrylic burr. Designate the teeth you will be prepping. Tooth number 21, 20, and 19. It might help to draw a line on the buccal and lingual side of the tooth. This will help you designate where the platform should end. Once you have designated where your platform should be, you can begin to prep the model. Remember that you are prepping 3 adjacent teeth. Make sure all the platforms are level with each other. Any high points that cannot be reached with a burr could be cut away with a Murphy knife. The end result should look as shown. Once the models are prepped, we can now begin to wax. You will need your waxing instruments, aluminum oxide, articulator, models, articulating paper, sticky wax, sculpting wax, Bunsen burner, and some models for reference. Since the first cusp we will be waxing are the supporting cusps of the mandibular posterior teeth, we need to make reference of the receiving areas on the maxillary. Here they are highlighted in blue. Mark these receiving areas onto your maxillary cast. Once the receiving areas are marked, you can coat the occlusal tables with a separating medium. Now you can begin coating the platforms with sticky wax. This photo should give reference to where the supporting cusp should be on tooth number 21. Build the supporting cone for tooth number 21. Be sure it is being built into the proper receiving area. Once you see the cone is in the right direction, keep adding until you make contact. Next, reference this photo to see where the supporting cusp for tooth number 20 goes. Begin to build your supporting cone for tooth number 20. A helpful tip for building cones would be to blow on the hot wax as you add it. This will give you more control over the wax. Once again, build the supporting cone into the proper receiving area until it makes contact. Once again, reference this photo for position of supporting cusps on tooth number 19. On tooth number 19, there are 2 supporting cusps. Be sure to build these into the proper receiving area of your maxillary cast, and build them individually. When finished, all your supporting cones should be built into the proper receiving area. They should look similar to the one shown. Now we can use this photo as a reference for the position of the non-supporting cusps. Begin to build your non-supporting cones. You can reference the last molar for position of the non-supporting cusp. Remember that these non-supporting cones do not have contact with the opposing teeth. Also, do not forget to add the 3rd distal buccal cusp of tooth number 19. Here is a lingual view of the non-supporting cusps for tooth number 19. Do the same for tooth number 20 and 21. Remember that tooth number 20 does have 2 lingual cusps. It is not necessary to build both lingual cusps at this moment. When finished, all your non-supporting and supporting cones should be done. They should fit into occlusion as shown. Now you will build fish mouths for tooth numbers 19, 20, and 21. Remember, the reason for this technique of waxing is to build the wax to proper occlusion with minimal carving. By building the peripheral border, you build the shape of the tooth first and fill in the occlusal table later. Make sure to check the occlusion after you're done with each fish mouth to make sure there are no interferences. Build each fish mouth individually. This will give you a better idea of the shape of each individual tooth. Once again, check that your supporting cusps are still where they should be, and that there are no contacts on the lingual cusps. When finished, all three fish mouths should look as shown. All contacts should be in the proper receiving area. Now it is time to fill the fish mouths and build up the occlusal tables. Once the fish mouth is filled, we can now sprinkle the occlusal table and check the contacts with articulating paper. Highlighted in blue are the supporting cusps of the mandibular molar. On the maxillary molar, the blue represents the receiving areas for these supporting cusps. The distal buccal cusp of the mandibular first molar should be received into the central fossa or central pit of the maxillary first molar. The mesiobuccal cusp should be received into the mesial marginal ridge of the maxillary molar. The mesiolingual supporting cusp of the maxillary first molar should be received by the central pit or the central fossa of the mandibular first molar. The distal lingual cusp of the maxillary first molar should be received by the distal marginal ridge of the mandibular first molar. Now that we know where the contacts should be, we could begin to carve the occlusal table of tooth number 19. First, carve all the primary anatomy, such as the mesiobuccal groove, the distal groove, central fossa, and lingual groove. Once the tooth is sectioned off properly, you will begin to see the basic shape and anatomy of a mandibular first molar. Any points of contact that shouldn't be there should be removed. Any points in contact that are missing need to be added. If contacts are in the proper place, do not touch the contact points. Carve or add around them. With a sharp tool, individualize the tooth between the fish mouth and the adjacent molar. After your carving is done, check your contact points. They should be in the areas shown. Now we can move on to tooth number 20. Fill the fish mouth with wax. Once the fish mouth is full, you can check for contacts. Once again, the blue dots represent the mandibular supporting cusp and the receiving area on the maxillary arch. The buccal supporting cusp of the mandibular second premolar should be received by the mesial marginal ridge of the maxillary second premolar. The lingual supporting cusp of the maxillary second premolar should be received by the distal marginal ridge of the mandibular second premolar. Once you designate where the contact should be, you can then begin carving the second premolar. Once again, you should start with the primary anatomy, such as the central groove and the lingual groove. Using the same technique as you used on the molar, add where necessary and remove high points. If contacts are in the right place, do not touch them. Individualize the tooth by the marginal ridges. You can then add secondary grooves and secondary anatomy. Once you are happy with your anatomy, you can now check your occlusion. There probably will be some high contact points. Simply carve away any high points you see. Once the high points are carved away, check your occlusion again. Your points of contact should be as shown. Repeating all previous steps, we can now move on to our last tooth, tooth number 21. After filling the fish mouth, check for contact points. Once again, the blue represents the supporting cusps of the mandibular first premolar and the receiving area on the maxillary arch. The buccal supporting cusp of the mandibular first premolar should be received by the mesial marginal ridge of the maxillary first premolar. The lingual supporting cusp of the maxillary first premolar should be received by the distal marginal ridge of the mandibular first premolar. Once the contact points are designated, begin carving the primary anatomy into the first mandibular premolar. Be sure to add the developmental grooves. Also, do not forget about the mesiolingual groove. Once again, if contact points are where they should be, do not touch them. Add where necessary for contour. Once you are happy with your anatomy, you can check your occlusion. Your contact points should be as shown. At the very end, check all the contacts for all 3 teeth. They should be as shown. Brush off any residue before polishing the wax-ups. For polishing, you will need your handpiece, packaging foam on a mandrel, and your wax-ups. Lightly spin your handpiece and run the packaging foam over your wax-ups. This will give a high shine finish. You are now done with exercise 6.